Consider supporting Archaeosoup on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Link available in the video description. Hello, welcome back to another Aspects of Archaeology. Now, today we're going to be looking at Phenomenology. Phenomenology is a branch of philosophy which actually has certain implications for archaeological research. In the early 20th century, German philosopher Edmund Husserl set out to describe the way it is that consciousness experiences reality. He believed all conscious experience could be reduced down to two principles, that being the act of thinking, and also the thing to which our thoughts are aimed. This was the basis of all reality. To Husserl, an object like a chair had an innate chairness to it, which we experienced when we focused on it, and in this way all of reality could be mapped out through its innate qualities. However, for his student Martin Heidegger and other philosophers who came afterwards, including the famous Jean-Paul Sartre, this was innately wrong. For them, there was no overarching meaning to reality. We create meaning by existing. We do not discover a map that's already laid out. This existentialism was most usefully summed up for the archaeologist by Merleau-Ponty. For him, the body was the mediator of all existence. For all of us, reality is limited by our body. We experience reality through our bodies, and the limitations that come with it. We cannot, for example, see around a corner until we get around that corner. This understanding of reality as being anchored by our bodies is useful for archaeologists because we often excavate bodies. We also excavate the environments through which these bodies pass, and therefore the body is a way to understand that environment. So, archaeologists took some of this philosophy and they decided to try and apply it to their field in order to attempt to better understand what it was that people in the past thought and experienced in their world. Phenomenology tells archaeologists that the best way to understand a site is to go there. So maybe making observations about whether a monument reflects the landscape around it. Or perhaps observing how visible a monument is from different parts of the landscape, or indeed bearing in mind how invisible it might have been when trees were around. An archaeologist may try to consider access to a monument in order to understand its function. Is it easy to get to? Would many people be able to fit, for example, into the passage of a Neolithic tomb? Some monuments are designed to have access from one direction and not another, such as Hadrian's Wall. In some cases, a monument may be designed to be imposing or make an impression upon approach. What does the placement of this castle, for example, tell you about its intended effect? And other, more general observations in the landscape around a monument are also useful. For example, did you have to walk up or downhill to get to the site? Did you have to cross a river? Are there local climatic variations? Does the valley, for example, often gather mist? Archaeologist Christopher Tilley is a strong advocate of phenomenology. However, it does have its critics. Some say it's simply too subjective. Will our observations be valid? And others suggest it's simply impossible to understand the landscape as it would have been because of modern interventions, such as roads, electricity pylons, or, in some cases, things like wind farms. So, still remain to be convinced, eh? Here are some case studies to possibly sway you on the matter. The Mesolithic site of Lepensky Vir in the Iron Gate Gorge of the Danube is a site heavily affected by its location. It sits on the side of the river, near a whirlpool, and is surrounded on all sides by steep cliffs. Through a perspective rooted in bodily experience, it is possible to understand a little bit of the site. For example, all of the houses faced the river. This was clearly a point of focus, and opposite was a mountain, shaped very distinctively. It is thought that this view affected people so much that they even built their houses to mirror the mountain. The near isolation of the site meant that when new women came in and brought with them new objects from the outside world, it had a profound effect on people who had been living in the gorge. The Dorset Cursus is a Neolithic monument just over 6 miles long, and when drawn on a map it looks rather boring. When transposed onto the landscape, however, it begins to come alive. It is by walking the Cursus that we begin to appreciate its place in the landscape and how things change along its length, not least the different gradients that we encounter as we walk. By observing where we are, and also where other monuments are in relationship to the Cursus, we may be able to understand a little more of the significance of this monument to the people who built and used it. Conway Castle in North Wales is a castle, and at first may seem to be just that, a simple monument that's easily explained by drawing a plan and understanding how it might be defended. However, the castle does sit in a modern town, and a visitor to the site has to concentrate in order to get an impression of what this castle once was. By observing its place in the landscape, we are able to see today that it still commands views across the town and across the mouth of the river. Indeed, from the castle we can see all the way down the valley. Crucially, we can also gain an impression of what the castle cannot see, in this case, upriver. And by walking through and amongst the castle's ruins, we gain something which cannot be captured on a top-down plan. We gain the human perspective, the intended impression. Now, all of this may seem like a very complicated way of stating the blatantly obvious. And to a certain extent, you're right. Academia has a wonderful talent of taking something which is fairly obvious and stating it as though it's something fairly profound. But phenomenology and its application in archaeology is definitely something of merit, if only because it formalises a way of thinking. It helps us to actually take thoughts and ideas from other disciplines, but also actually to try and grasp a way of entering a new perspective on archaeological finds and the archaeological record itself. Of course, this is sometimes very controversial, and even I actually sometimes think that phenomenology and its implications are taken too far. But it is, nonetheless, a very valid method if people want to try and understand the past. So, that's been Phenomenology. Hopefully you've found this video interesting and or useful. Feel free to comment below if you have any thoughts. Naturally, if you have any questions for me, feel free to send them my way. And while we're on the topic of things you can do, feel free to subscribe to the channel just by pushing the button above. And also, as well, actually, please do follow us on Facebook. Archaeosoup has a Facebook page. All you need to do is search for Archaeosoup Productions and click like. And things like news stories and photographs, things like that, often which don't make it onto the YouTube channel, make it onto the page instead. We also happen to be on Twitter now, but that's connected to the Facebook page. So if you absolutely need to find out something that we've posted on Twitter, then you can just by searching for @Archaeosoup, and the soup is spelt with a 0, not an O. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye. Just in case they blow off. Just worried they'll come off the wall.